Hi, this is your host Sapient Bhartiya, and welcome to another episode of TFR Let's Talk. And today we have with us Rishi Singh, founder and CEO of Sapient.ai. Rishi, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Swapnil, thank you so much for having me here.
It's my pleasure to host you here today. First of all, I would love to know a bit about the company. Talk a bit about what problem you saw in 2023 that you felt that problem is still needed to be solved despite this crowded space that led to creation of this company.
I'll give you a little bit of a background about myself. Founders. I'm a founder and CEO of the Sapient.ai. But before founding this company, I also co-founded another company called Harness.io that you might be familiar with. It's a leading provider of the software delivery system. And what that essentially means is that we provide the delivery pipeline for the software developers so that they can create, they can ship their code to the production environment, as early as possible. And I think that's where I saw there is a repetitive pattern that most of the companies are able to streamline their delivery process, but the next bottleneck started emerging in the software testing process. And I think that's where the developers are spending most of their time in spite of having the delivery, the pipeline in place. So the goal of the Sapient AI is really, unblock the developers, help them, do a better job on the software testing. And so it's really building this intelligent platform that has a deeper understanding about the code. It has a better understanding about the application APIs. Everything is going on that developers have to take care so that they can focus primarily on building the new feature or building the new innovations.
Can you talk about how you have seen the evolution of the company, how you have seen the growth of the company?
So we launched our company last year. Our first, the product was the Sapient AI Test Coder. So this product was primarily focused on, the helping the developers do the unit testing. And so the unit testing, like the developers write a lot of code to build the new features, and then they end up spending a lot of time writing the test code. And so, in order for the developers to, to free up their time, like, almost like, 20 to 40% of their time, we built this product, that would automatically analyze the code. And then, it will bring this QA mindset, will come up with the right set of the test cases. And eventually, it will be able to generate the code, which is relevant for the code functionality, and should be able to provide the comprehensive coverage. So again, the whole idea was, with our first product, was that, to allow the developers, not get involved in writing the boilerplate test code, and end up spending like more the amount of the time they end up writing the original functionality.
I want to talk about the AI landscape in general. AI has been around for, we can say, decades or centuries, but there's a renewed interest in AI after the whole OpenAI and ChatGPT. That's when we start talking a lot about AI again, Gen AI, and suddenly we are seeing it in its production. It's no longer just a hype cycle. From your perspective, how you have seen the evolution of AI, Gen AI in the last 1.5 years, especially given the recent WWDC, Apple is integrating ChatGPT, OpenAI is baking into the iOS itself. So how you are seeing the evolution where you're like, hey, this is not the next hype. It is a very transformative technology, same scope of the Linux kernel or Kubernetes or Docker container.
In my experience, the AI was more or less a hype or the buzz, probably last year. But probably by end of last year and this year, I see this AI being used on a regular basis in day-to-day life, and especially I'll talk more about the developers and the DevOps life cycle. I think I remember that in early 2023, I think the most of the people were confused about some of these AI coding assistants that were out there, those were released, and they were not sure how valuable it's going to be, how accurate the code is going to be. There were most of the companies were coming up with a list of initiatives to how to adopt this AI coding assistant. But we do see that now a lot of coding assistants are in action, and I think I put myself as the Sapient.ai coder as one of the test code generator, which is the leading the effort in writing this test code, using the generative AI for the software developers. So I do see this one is more into the action. But at the same time, I also see that now people have started measuring the actual outcome of these the AI technologies than just relying on the buzz. And so, for example, since I work closely with the software developers, the AI coding assistants become very common phenomena in their day-to-day life. And so it is one of those powerful tools that help you write a lot of code at a faster pace. But at the end, but in the end, it ends up generating so much of a code. It ends up accumulating so much of a code that somebody has to start worrying about who is going to own the code, and who exactly is going to maintain the the code going forward. So the AI itself has evolved, going from the buzz to now the real uses in everyday life, and people are being more diligent in using this AI technology and making sure it's bringing the value instead of just using it.
When it comes to AI, sometimes there is also a fear that Gen AI is going to take away our jobs. Do you see AI as a threat to engineers, or you see that it's a powerful tool that will actually empower and enable them?
From my perspective, I don't see AI as a threat. I think it is a natural evolution. I'm sure, we have gone through, the many, the technical or technological evolution, during this, the human life. And the AI is one of them. Of course, the way we operate is going to be different than what we were doing before. But with said so, I think we have to recognize that this is not a one-time thing. This has been going on for ages. I when I started my career, I think I used to do the coding in the VI or the Emacs editor. The amount of the code that I used to write versus the amount of the code that I can write today is very different. Probably I could output probably the 10 times the amount of the code that I could do before. Now, with the help of the AI, it's going to empower us. It gives us the extra, ammunition that now I can produce and do a lot more innovation than what I was able to do it before. And so, the way we approach things is going to be a little different. But in the end, we as a human, we will remain in charge. We are the one who is going to drive some of those critical innovations. So while we are on this topic, let me tell you a little bit about the new product that we are going to launch for the next week, right? For example, the AI has gone through this has been phenomenal in terms of the adoption among the developers community, especially for the AI coding assistant. When we started looking into the testing space and the amount of the code that needs to be generated to cover all the edge cases and the boundary conditions for the software testing, it was humongous. And so when I started looking at the AI coding assistant, what exactly is it doing? It is just built on the same testing foundation, like whatever the framework and the libraries, the design patterns that we had come up in the last couple of decades for the unit testing, for the the AI testing. Now, what AI coding assistant ended up doing is created a machine that could churn a lot more code than an average human being. But it didn't necessarily change the foundational element. So when it comes to the changing the foundation and coming up with a radically a new approach from where it is, we still need some of the humans, like we as a developer, to innovate some of the things and teach the AI to start adopting a new path, a new trajectory than where it is. So AI is always built on top of what we have learned so far. We are always able to train the AI to do the things. But when it comes to bringing the radical new innovations, I think it still lies a lot with us to do and show the path.
If you look at Sapient, and if you look at the engineering teams, when folks move to Sapient, I want to just okay, this is how a developer's life changes. What they were doing yesterday versus what they are doing today after embracing? What is the change in their day-to-day life after moving to Sapient?
Thank you for asking that questions. And so, it does allow me to delve a bit about like the new thing, some of the revolutionary things that we are, bringing for the software developers. So, I'll tell you about the unit testing, and I think this is where like the Sapient, provides a, the modern unit testing platform. So, unit testing was the thing that was discovered probably like a couple of decades ago, and the whole idea is that developers are writing some code, they want to test it. Once they are happy with their test, they would like to codify it. And so let's say if I've written a program, calculator program that adds two number, let's say A and B, and I get the output. So given a number 2 and 3, I would expect a value 5. And in order for me to test these things on a repeated basis, at every build, so that we don't end up accidentally changing or accidentally cause regression, we end up codifying. We end up writing a more code that takes those input and output and continues to verify every time. Now, as a developer, I think that brings a lot of extra work. It requires me to write a lot of the boilerplate code. It requires me to own and maintain the code. So when you are moving, using the Sapient, especially using this codeless approach of doing the unit testing, you go back to the foundational thing where you can test everything at the unit level, where the focus stays on the input and output instead of writing the more code and maintaining the boilerplate code. So that is the unique value prop that Sapient brings in for the developers, where there is a simplified interface. They can continue to excel in the area of the unit testing, but they don't have to write the extra code or maintain the extra test code.
This is becoming a crowded space by now. How is Sapient different from what others are offering? What kind of edge you have over others?
When you think about this unit testing, there are the four major things that comes into in your mind, right? One is that unit testing, given a functionality, you have to write the code, write the test code, and typically that ratio goes somewhere 1 to 5. So in other words, if I've written like 100 lines of the code to deliver some functionality, I'll end up writing 500 lines of the code to cover all the edge cases and the boundary conditions, right? So the number one thing is it's a labor intensive process. You have to spend significant amount of time. The second thing is we need to bring the right skill set on covering all the edge cases to create the comprehensive coverage. And then the third thing is the debugging. The debugging hasn't changed for almost like last 2 decades. Ever since the unit testing has evolved. The debugging is always problematic. And the finally is that whatever the code that you write, somebody has to own it and maintain it going forward. So in spite of the fact that it's a crowded space, I think the most of these tools, most of these AI assistants are helping in the first 2 areas. So it is capable of writing the code on your behalf with some oversight. It is also capable of the generating the comprehensive coverage with some oversight. But when it comes to the debugging or the maintaining the code, it still lies with the individual developers. They're still dealing with some of those cryptic messages and finding their way to troubleshoot the problems. And finally, since it deals with generating a lot of code, almost like 5 times the amount of the code that is being tested, it has to be owned and maintained by those developers. And so it is a crowded space, but still the Sapient is able to provide this revolutionary approach where individual developers can still reap the benefit of unit testing, which means like they will still have the coverage. They will be able to detect the bugs early on. They can make the right design choices because they're utilizing the unit testing. But they don't have to deal with this boilerplate code and maintain the code. They can get the easy debugging. They don't have to deal with this cryptic the messages whenever there is the test failures. And so this is how we are separating. So I think you know you know it will go through the few iterations where a lot of companies have evolved. They're all building on top of what is being offered as a code generator, as a part of this large language model of generating the code. But then we need to come up with the new approach where we are changing things fundamentally. So Sapient AI is the leading, where we are redefining the process of the unit testing, and the challenging in a way that it becomes accessible and less complex for most of the developers to do it.
What kind of growth you have seen in the last 1.5 year, and what plans you have for growth?
We have seen the phenomenal growth. We built the product, in 2023. Our approach was to use the PLG motion. And so, once the product is out there, it's available in the marketplace, anyone can download and they can start using the product on their own. And so, we have seen the traction from all around the world. We have seen the developers from China, Argentina, from South Africa, from India, of course, from the United States and the Canada. Everyone has been adopting our platform. And as we are releasing this new product, which is the Sapient Codeless, which is going to be the radically different from this existing the unit testing approach. We are expecting a lot more traction there. We also seen traction on the enterprise front. What I can tell you is probably half of the Fortune 10 companies are using the Sapient in some form. So we have seen a great traction and a lot of growth there. We are seeing, we are expecting, far more growth in, later this year and probably the next year. I am coming from the software delivery background. As you heard, I co-founded the other company, and my goal is to really build this software quality system, which not only takes care of the unit testing, but it goes at length addressing the API, addressing the end-to-end testing. In the end, the software developers should feel empowered that they have a platform in place that they can rely on, and they don't necessarily have to spend time. They can avoid the toil associated with verifying the application and making sure everything is addressed before it can be shipped to the production environment.
Of course, you may not be able to name, and I won't ask you to name, but if you can also tell what kind of use cases you're seeing, what kind of companies are using Sapient?
It goes across, across verticals. So the way we have positioned ourselves is, since it's a developer tool, so it's less about the specific vertical. It's more about the technology stack that we're supporting. In our first iteration, I think the majority of our technology stack has received attraction from the Java and the related technologies. So something like the Java, Kotlin, or the Scala kind of language. We are building the more support from the other technology stack, like the Python, Golang, the TypeScript, the .NET platform, and so on. So it's more driven by the individual technology stack than the specific verticals. We have seen the traction from all size of company, mid-sized company, as well as the larger enterprises.
And when we look at companies, what kind of teams or what kind of personas are your audience there?
Our product is primarily built for the software developers. So typically the user persona is the developers. They come to our website, they sign up, they install the product in their IDE, and they get go right away.
What are the things in your pipeline? What are the things we should expect from Sapient this year?
So I think the number one thing is the Sapient Codeless that I just talked about. I think we are pretty close to our release. It's a new product, and it's a new way of doing the unit testing without writing and maintaining the code. That's number one. And then we also have we are also planning to bring the more coverage in terms of technology stack. Something I just talked a bit earlier about the Python, the .NET, the Golang, and the TypeScript, and so that as a developer, I have the complete coverage, all the way from the front end, back end, and all the necessary technology. Down the line, our our roadmap includes this API testing. So we should be releasing some product maybe later this year, and that will be more focused on the API. The reality is like the most of the environments have converted into the microservices environment, and in the today's world, it has become quite a chaotic situation managing too many microservices, their APIs, and their interactions.
What kind of companies are you targeting? Is it like startups, early stage startups, or you're looking at big enterprises?
We wanted to keep the radius bigger, but the most of our traction has come from the mid to large size enterprises, and I think that is primarily because the technology stack that we cover at the moment. I think our coverage is more on the we are stronger on the Java and the related technology stack, which is primarily used in mid to large enterprises. I think as we bring the support for the other languages, other technology stacks, I think I do expect attraction from these smaller startups and so.
Rishi, thank you so much for joining me today. Talk about the company, talk about the problem that you're solving for the whole ecosystem. Thanks for great insights. And I would love to chat with you folks again. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.